Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Beitzah Daf Chav Dalid, we're going to review the Mishnah on Chav Gimel Amud Beis, this new parak. Ein Sodin Dogim Min Hababirin Biyamtiv. A person is not allowed to trap fish if it's in a large enclosure on Yomtiv. And Rashi told us that unlike Bishul, when it comes to cooking, for example, or Shchita, these are things that are allowed to be done on Yom Tov, because if you don't do it on Yom Tov, you do it before, the meat could spoil. Mash'en Kain, when it comes to something like trapping, you could have already done all that before Yom Tov, and it wouldn't have made any difference in the quality of the fish. And therefore, trapping is usher on Yom Tov. You can't give it food because they're not yours, and you have no need to have to feed something which is not yours. If they're in this enclosure, then you are allowed to take them. Because they're yours, so you feed them. They're not all the same. The general rule is, and we'll discuss this on Chav Daled 1 Aleph, if there's nothing which is holding back trapping, then it's mutter, because it's right there. You can just simply take it. However, if it's something which is mechusar sida, that you still have to trap it, that's not allowed. So the Gemara asked the following question: Minhu bibirin shel chaya v'shel ofos. When it comes to these enclosures of a chaya and an oaf, ein sadin mehen biyamtiv. You're not allowed to trap from them on Yom Tov. They noislim fnei mezonos, and it also says you cannot give them food. So our Mishnah told us, as we just said, that a chay and oaf that are already in this enclosure, because it's a small enclosure, so you could take them because it's like already trapped. However, over here it says you can't do it, because it's not already trapped. So it's kasha chaya chaya and kasha ofos ofos. So bishlam chaya chaya lu kasha Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. It's possible we can make a distinction when it comes to non-domesticated animals, that we can just say it's the machlokas Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. What's that? It's not. Rabbi Yehuda Omer hatzad sipur lemigdol. When it comes to trapping a bird in a migdol in a tower, or some sort of a cage, with smil bias chayiv, or deer, which even though it's in a house, according to him, you're chayiv. Now labayis to the machayiv, you're only chayiv because it's in a house which, at least in those days, wasn't that big. So it was like you captured this deer. Bubble babirin low. However, when it comes to capturing a deer in a bibirin, in these enclosures, you're not chayiv. Must be why? Because that's not considered like it's trapped, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda, who says it's not like it's though it's trapped when it's in the bibirin, therefore on Yom Tov, unlike our Mishnah, you would not be able to take it. Ramim Ormim Sipur Lamigdol. He agrees when it comes to a bird. However, Tzvi Legino Chatzo Bibirin. He says when it comes to a deer, it's even when it's in a garden, a chatzar, or a bibirin, then you're already going to be chayiv if you did that on Yom Tov. Which, therefore, now, again, it's flipped on our Mishnah, since it was already in a bibirin before Yom Tov, so therefore it's already trapped according to the Rabbanan. So therefore you can just say it's a machlokas when it comes to bibirin between Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanna Kama whether it's considered to be trapped. El ofos ofos kasha. The question is by birds, because we don't find a machlokas by birds. We see they both say the same thing. Maybe it depends if we're dealing with an enclosure which has a roof, and therefore it's considered trapped. If it doesn't have it's an enclosure without a roof, obviously a bird could fly away. It's not considered entrapped. Habayis, it talks about a house, Tikibibor Mikuridami, which is just like an enclosure which has a roof, because a house has a roof. they all agree when it comes to a bird that it's not a house, that you're not chayiv if you catch it in a house, which means that they would both hold by bibirin. You would not be chayiv if you caught it in bibirin, even in an enclosed with a roof, and therefore our Mishnah that says that if there's a bird in a bibirin, then that's okay. In the bibirin, then it's okay. What are you talking about? How you can't take it because that would be trap. You would be trapping by taking it. So how do we answer the question by birds? So here we're talking about a free bird, as the pasuk says in Emor Krosim Dror, on the Liberty Bell, that you should proclaim liberty throughout all of your inhabitants. And the word dror is free. So it's sipor dror is like a free bird that is not easy to catch. Shein mekabelos moros. It doesn't accept mastery over it. And therefore, since you can't catch this bird, in that case, unless it's entrapped in a migdal, but maybe regular birds are entrapped even by biburin. So that's how perhaps you can explain it. That when the Mishnah talks about that birds are considered trapped, those are regular birds. However, when it comes to free birds, so in that case, you would actually have to catch it in a migdal in order to be chayiv. The Tana Rabbi Shmuel, Loma nikra shemot sipur dror. Why is it called like a free bird? Shidara bibayis kibasada, because it lives in a house the same way like in a field. In other words, even if it's in your house flying around, it will not feel that it's captured. It'll just keep flying around. Maybe we could not have to say it's a machlokes in the Tanakama. You can just say whether it's a biber katan. Our mission is a biber katan, therefore it's caught. And this other statement, the Beitzah, is biber gadol, it's bigger enclosure, and therefore it's not like it's caught. So heichadam biber katan, heichadam biber gadol. What's big? What's small? What does that mean? So we actually have as much as 4 answers. So Omer Abashi, kol heichadoroy at basra. If a person chases after it, and he can catch it in one lunge, one jump, biber katan. That means it's small enclosure. But idach biber gadol, otherwise it's big. Inami kol heichadi ika ukzi. If there's, Rashi says zavius, says there's corners, biber gadol. Idach biber katan. If there's not all these different corners and hiding places. Inami, third answer, kol heichad enafli tula dekasli hadadi. Biber katan, vidach biber gadol. If it's so small that the walls cast shade to the other side, it obviously shows that it's not very wide, and therefore it's a biber katan. Omer local habibir and shav, and they're not all equal. Some Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Huda, Mishma halakha, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. It's a good point. Just because it's a biber, it depends on the size. That sounds like people argue. What's the difference? Malach is like him anyway. Similarly, gomer zemurta tehei. So this is a famous expression that's often said, is that when we're learning Gemara, we're learning, is it like a song that it just has no meaning or depth or purpose, that it's being repeated for no purpose? No, it's obviously of value that we should know all these different pieces. So zekla if it's missing trapping, so he said then it's aser. Shein mechosser tzidas mutter. So in this, the Gemara asks the question, heichidam mechosser tzida. What does it mean it's missing being trapped? So Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, this is like a 4th answer. Mishmul kol sheimer haba matzuda b'nitzadenu. If anyone says let's grab a trap and let's trap it, obviously means it's not trapped yet. How about when it comes to geese and roosters? We do say habi matsuda b'netzadenu. We do say let's capture it, which seemingly would mean that right now it's not captured. But nonetheless we learn hatzada wasn't matana going v'yoini hard to see is putter. Why would you be putter? L'chayra, you trapped them. So Amarab Barab Huna Mishmul Halolu Boyin with Kaloivan. Well, Arab. These come back to their nests, to their cages at night, So since they come naturally anyway, on their own to their cage or to their nest, so therefore it's like it's already captured. The ones that don't come naturally to their nest or to their cage, then you would violate trapping. So therefore, the pshat is golim. Even though you say let's go grab it, the truth is it's not really considered like you're trapping it because it would come naturally anyway at night. These other doves do go back to their nests at night, but Tanya, nonetheless, we said, if your person traps these birds, or these birds that were acquired with jugs, bebiros, chayiv. It says befaris that you're chayiv. The question is, these are also types of birds that go back to their cages, they'll go back to their nest, so then l'chari you should be patur, just like we said regarding the avos and v'tarnagoyim. So el Rabba Barab Huna Amar Shmuel Halalu Boyin L'Kaloiban, those go back to their cages, to their nests, L'Ereb at night, Umazona Sanalecha, and you have an obligation to support it. But Halalu Boyin L'Kaloiban, it's true that these other ones come back to their nests, L'Ereb, they in Mizona Sanalecha, but they're not yours. Says Rashi, bottom line, Hilkach Kibehemahain B'Chashivi Mizuman. It's considered like it's Mizuman, because you know that it's like it's yours because you have to support it. So therefore, you're anticipating it. It's like it's yours. It is yours, and therefore, that is the chiluk. Okay, fine. Ramari Oimer Haki Avidi Hahani Avidi Lorivoy Bahani Lo Avidi Lorivoy. He says it's totally on whether or not these birds are gonna fly away. So kulanami avidi laraboy, when birds fly, right? They're all going to fly away. So he says lakaloivan kamrinan the avidi lariboy, to their nests or to their tents, to their cages. What I'm saying, the avidi lariboy, that they that they go away from. It says Rashi, parchin ad kinan, they fly to their nests. With sarch la'aloy sachrein, you have to go up to them. Gam sham nishmatin mimenu v'yordin. And sometimes they go down. Okay, let's before we get into the next Mishnah, let's see a couple of questions. Question 6: Elu arba chilukim nemer b'gemara being biber gadol lekatan. And they generously say just write 2 of them. We're going to say all 4. Question 6: First of all, if you can catch it in one lunge, one jump, that's a biber katan. If it has corners, that's considered to be a biber gadol, if not to biber katan. A third is if it casts a shadow from one wall to the next, it's obviously not very wide, that's a biber katan. And last is anyone who says, Havi mitsuda b'netzadenu, if anyone says, let's go trap it, obviously that's indicating that it is a large biber. Okay, look at question TB 30. Umadua vazavatanagoim mukta l'tzaydin b'yamtiv. Why are you allowed to trap these animals, these birds, or these goose or tarnagol? So he says, as we just mentioned, avazavatanagoim keep on shiboin l'koloivan. They go back to their nests, to their cages b'erev. Umazonu sanalachan. You have to feed them. Harihim kibehema b'chashivi mazumin. Inami says mishum sheinam nishmatim ubarchin l'kaloiban. They don't run away from their nest. They basically stay there, and therefore that's the reason why it is. Those are birds that you can get on Yom Tov, and it's not an issue. Okay. All right. Let's continue with the next Mishnah. Mitsudos, one who traps that are set up for a chai of oaf dugim, shios in the Arab Yom Tov. Let's say you set these traps up before Yom Tov. Will yitel mehem b'Yom Tov. You're not allowed to on Yom Tov take from those traps. El imkin yadua shenitzayim Arab Yom Tov, unless you knew that they were already captured from Arab Yom Tov. So if you have a trap before Yom Tov and you saw that right before Yom Tov was captured, so now even on Yom Tov you can take it because it was already trapped before. Otherwise, you trapped it on Yom Tov. Now, even though you didn't do it b'yadayim, still you're not allowed to use it. Fine. El Inkin Yadush and Sunday Erev Yom Tov Umasa benachriach. There's a story by a non-Jew. Shehevi dogim l'Rabbi Gamliel. He gave fish. The Omer mutarin hein, and he said they're allowed. El Shin retzon the kabel manu. I just don't want to accept them from you. Which l'chayra, as the Gemara now says, masa lister. L'chayra, that sounds to be a contradiction, because we just said that if you're not sure what its status is, if it wasn't from Erev Yom Tov, you can't use it. And all of a sudden Rabbi Lil says, oh yeah, they're mutter. What do you mean they're mutter? That seems like they're usher. So chaser mechzva hakatan. There was words missing, so I was supposed to read it. Safik muchan usher. If it's unsure whether it was already prepared from before Yom Tov, then it's usher. And to explain Safik muchan usher, which is inserted in the Mishnah, Rabbi Gamliel Mater, he allows it and says, even if it's a suffix, I'll allow it. When this person brought fish, Rabbi said they're mutter. I just don't want to accept them from you. As Rashi says, Shani Sinai, we're not the best of friends, so I'm not going to be makabel from you. But Ikar Adin, I should be able to do so, because I hold that when it comes to Safik Muchan, it's mutter. Okay, so it's a machlokas whether or not, what the din is, if it's a suffix, whether it was prepared before Yom Tov or not. To Sanya, we learn Safik Muchan. What's the din of Safik Muchan? So we have a machlokas. Rabbi Gamliel Mater, Rabbi Yeshua Oyser. So it's a machlokas. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Halacha Rabbi Yeshua. The halacha is Rabbi Yeshua that Safik Muchan is Oser. The Yigan Masni Law the Sanya. As we continue to Chav Daladam and Beis, some people learn it a little bit differently about the following case. Sheichtin min ha-nigrin b'yom tov. A person is allowed to shecht from an animal that, for example, a chaya, a wild undomesticated animal that was in a enclosed area. Rashi says min biram, because they were already trapped. Avalo min hara shasos, not from some type of a net, as Rashi says, matzachaya b'mitzudasai. If you found it in its net, safik notzud hayom, safik notzud me'esmol. Did you catch it today on Yom Tov or on Erev Yom Tov yesterday? It's not so clear. So you're not allowed to do so. Why not? Because it's clear. We're talking about a safik muchan, so muchan is aser. Umin chamurois, also from traps. Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer Omer ba ben umatzon. Let's say you came and found mekukolin, that the nets were already moved me'erev Yom Tov, biyadua she'me'erev Yom Tov nitzaydei. You can already know that it must be that they were caught before. Umitarin. Ba matzah mekukolin b'Yom Tov. Let's say you found that the nets were only moved on Yom Tov, biyadua she'be Yom Tov nitzaydei b'yasurin. Then you'll know for sure that's aser. So if you know for sure it's that it was on Yom Tov, it's a problem. If you know for sure it was on Erev Yom Tov, it's definitely not a problem. But how about when it comes to a suffix? A hogufa kasha. Amrit ba matzah mekukol me'erev Yom Tov biyadua me'erev Yom Tov. You knew for sure that it was on Erev Yom Tov. Now nitzoda is when it was trapped. The taima de ba matzah mekukol. Because you saw it that way. Ha sveika surin. L'chayra means in case of a suffix, it's aser. Ema seifa ba matzah mekukolim b'yom tov. You found it on Yom Tov only if you know for sure. B'yadua should be Yom Tov nitzayda. That's aser. Now taima de ba matzah mekukolim, because you know for sure it happened on Yom Tov. Mashma ha sveika me'erev Yom Tov nitzayda mutarin. L'chayra by suffix muchan, it's allowed. So the Reisha and the Sefer contradict each other. So Gemara says Hakan Kamer. Ba matzah mekukolim me'erev Yom Tov. If you found those mekukolim me'erev Yom Tov, b'yadua she'me'erev Yom Tov nitzodu mutarin. If you saw it happen on Erev Yom Tov, then you know for sure it was obviously caught then. Hasveika, if let's say there's any doubt, nasekmi shenitzaydu b'Yom Tov yasurin. It's ki'ilu, like you know for sure. So therefore, according to this, the nasekmi, which you could always say nasekmi either way, but nasekmi over here is explaining that when it comes to a case of suffix muchan is aser. Amr Yehuda Amr Shmuel halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer. In fact, the halacha is in accordance to this idea that in the case of suffix muchan is aser. Question 7. Sheichtin min hanigrain b'yamtiv eloy min rishasais madua lo min harishasais. Why not from these nets? Question 7. Shesafik nitzadu hayom, safik nitzadim esmo aser. If it's unsure whether you caught them today or yesterday, so then the din is it is aser. Okay, next piece by the 2 dots. The Omer Mutarinheim. So when it came to the Nachri, he said, here's some food. It was yomtiv. The Nachri was giving him a gift. And he said, you know what? It's allowed, but I'm not going to take it. Now, Mutarin Lamai. The fact that he says it's mutter, what exactly did he mean? Obviously, he was being lenient, but to what extent? Mutarin Lamai. Rabbi Mutan Lakabel. He was saying that you're allowed to accept it, says Rashi, but tiltal. The kuli hai lo achmir b'safik muchan. Even though we're not sure when it happened, we're not going to be so strict on a suffix to say it's us or even to take it. That's like it's an isser muksa. So you could move it. It's not muksa. But Rashi says abul bachila lo sharinu Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel never allowed you to eat it. He was only saying you can accept it because it's a suffix anyway. So in the case of suffix muchan, we're not going to have you eat it, but at least we'll let you take it. Levi armer mutar bachila. No, he said you could even eat it. It's not a problem. It's 100% totally fine. So Omer Rav. So that's the machlokas. So Rav says very strong language here. Le'olam al yimna adam atzma beis medrash shafil sha'achas. A person should never distance themselves from the beis medrash even for 1 hour. You should always find yourself in the beis medrash because you never know what you're going to miss. Because I and Levi were both in front of Rabbi, Levi who disagreed and says mutar b'achila. So when he said that statement, we were together. And at night he said you're allowed to eat it. Which therefore that's what Levi thought because he heard him say that. And then afterwards he was chayzer a little bit. He changed his mind and says no, you can only accept it, but you cannot actually eat it. So since I was there and I heard what was said the second time, I knew that was the correct answer, and I retracted, and I realized that it's only that you're allowed to take it, but you're not allowed to eat it. So Levi, who would say, well, I'm 100% sure that this is the halacha, it's because, yeah, he did hear it, but he didn't hear the retraction. And therefore, that's why a person should never not be in the beis medrash. Meis Sveis, the Gemara asked a question. So l'chayra, there's an opinion. Everyone holds that you could actually makabel a gift from a nachri. The question is, are you allowed to eat it? So Meis Sveis, nachri shehevi daring liYisrael. So let's say you have a nachri that gives a gift to a Jew. He's allowed to afil dogim hamifulamim, even if they happen to be moist fish, which gives the appearance that he actually caught it on Yom Tiv, Uperis b'nei Yomin, even if it looks like fruit that are on that day. So mutarim, you are allowed to take these things. Now, the question is, I can understand why we say you can capture it, you can hold on to it, because it's a case, as Rashi says, the lav suffiku, it's not really a suffix, el vadai muksa. It really is muksa because it's clearly, seemingly, it seems like he took it today. He plucked it off today. Equal meimer the mata betil tulo. It's possible, at least you could say it's not muksa. It's possible you could say such a thing. But to go so lenient and to say that you could eat it, that seems to be hard to imagine that we would allow such a thing. What do you mean? How is your answer any better? Paris ben Yomi mishar betiltel. It's muksa. So okay, fine. Eating it is a bigger kula than it not being muksa. But if you know for sure that he plucked it on Shabbos, for example, or on Yom Tov, then you're not allowed to touch it. It's muksa. So why is it any better than you? So obviously we have to understand this case a little bit better. Ella bikvari diadimi uperi de kavishi b'yerka skinan. Says Rashi, we're talking about fish that are red, adumim, shalonos lechan v'admumis shetachas l'chayehen sheboikinois sham. when you look at this fish, it did not lose its color, its redness. So it really looks very much that it was just taken, but the reality is it wasn't. Also, when it comes to these fruits, says Rashi, kishalaitam, when you gather them, tamna miyad b'yerik, he put it immediately together with a vegetable. Shal yivrach lachlusen kvishi tamunin. He basically put it in like a jar to be able to preserve it so that its moisture remained. However, Vahani, says Rashi, Vahani vadi mucha ninhu dinikarin shem erev yom tov hein. We know that this was actually done on erev yom tov. Ashmin and after the dumble of neyomin loichashim lemorsayin. We're not considered morsayin, says Rashi, even though it looks like it came from this day, but we know it's not a case of suffix. We know for sure that it was from erev yom tov. But my karlu b'nei yomin. So why do we call it that? Shin kain b'nei yomin, because that's what it has the appearance of. Okay. Omer Rav Papa Hilchasa. So what is the whole halacha about accepting a gift from a nachri? So nachri shehevi darin liYisrael b'yom tov. So it depends. Im yesh ma'oisa hamin b'mechuber aser. If this nachri has other fruits, let's say he gives you an apple, and you see right behind him is his apple tree filled with apples, then it's aser. However, le'erev nami mutar asurin b'chnei shiasu. By the way, even that night is aser to eat that apple b'chnei shiasu. The amount of time that it would take for one to be able to pluck those apples, because you can't get any hana from it, not on Shabbos, not only or Yom Tov, but even afterwards. However, im ein ma'isa hamin b'mechuber teichat chum mutter, chutz l'chum aser. Let's say he's holding an apple, and you see that his whole apple tree, there's not a single apple on the tree. Everything was tolish, even though maybe you could say, well, maybe he did all of them today. But the reality is that they were all detached, presumably before Yom Tov, and therefore it's allowed, provided that it's teichat chum. However, it's chutz l'chum if, let's say, he took them from outside of the chum, as we continue to Chaf Ham with Aleph, that is aser. And Rashi says, Lo shemati tam mekubel b'davar. I'm not exactly sure the issue with chutz l'chum, the imishum muksa my muter Yisrael acher. As we're going to see, why would it be allowed for another yid? That's what the last line we're going to see in the Gemara. B'habal b'shil Yisrael zeh muter Yisrael acher. If he took it for one Yisrael, another Yisrael would allow it. So if you skip to the fourth line of Rashi, V'yishlemer, the Gabi Isser Tchumim Durabanan, when it comes to, this is talking about Isser Tchumim, so we're not so strict. Well, Achmer Koli Hai, V'dayin im Asruhu al Zeh. We're just going to answer this guy that he plucked it for, but not the other person. Or he didn't pluck it necessarily, but he took it from Chutz L'Tchum, because Tchumim is a Din Durabanan, so we're not going to allow for him, but for someone else, yes. Let's look at this crucial Rashi. Actually, let's read question 8 first. That's where we're going to stop. Nachri shehevi darin b'mechuber. If a nachri gives you a fruit that was attached, aser le'erev b'chdei shiasu, all the way k'dei shiasu, the amount of time that it takes to be able to do that particular malacha. So ma tam shesarach lahamtin b'chdei shiasu. Why do you have to wait? Ma tam shemutter le'erev Rishon afilu the leil yom tov shenihu. How come you're allowed to eat it on Yom Tov Sheni? So let's look in Rashi. Very important Rashi. So Arav Asurin b'chdei shiasu k'dei shel yehenim b'malachas Yom Tov, because you're not allowed to derive any hana from the malacha that even the nachri did. V'hadi karmel Arav Asurin b'chdei shiasu hol acher kein mutarin. Afterwards it's mutar afilu Arav Rishon nami. Afa gav the leil yom tov shenihu mamtin b'chdei shiasu muturin. We say that it's mutar b'marashach. Im halai l'choyelhu hari himtin b'chdei shiasu. Im koideshu nimsa sheneklatu b'choyel. So let's say it's a yom tov sheni shagalius. So then he grabbed it on the first day. Let's say he plucked it. So the question is, on the second day, it's not a problem. It's yom tov. No, but b'marashach. Either yesterday was Yom Tov, so I waited b'chdei shiasu today, or the truth is, and therefore it's like a weekday, or yesterday was really chol, and therefore he was allowed to do it anyway because it was a weekday. So today's Yom Tov, I didn't even have to really wait b'chdei shi'as, so I'm just doing it as a chumrah. Let's look at question 8 answer. Asur b'chdei shi'as v'kadei shelo yehenim b'malchus Yom Tov u'mutar erev rishon b'manashach im halayla chol hari himtin b'chdei shi'asu v'im halayla kodesh nimsa shel hachoil. So that's as we just explained. Let's see one last question, then we'll stop. TA 29. Nachri shehebi darwin li Yisrael b'yamtiv. Ha'im mutali hanos also Yisrael b'yamtiv b'lib the hilchas. We just said this. So if there's ma'osa hamin from that species that's attached, usher. Even that night, b'chdei shi'asu, it's usher. In ma'osa min b'mechuber, then it depends. Torchat chum is mutter, chutz chum is usher. Ad kan.